Hi, and thanks for joining us on Focus on Health, our twice-a-month show where we look at community organizations, initiatives, individuals, businesses, anyone that's doing something good in the community to help people stay active, have fun, and just be healthy. My name's Jay Cohen. I'm with the Winstead Y, and tonight we've got another wonderful guest. Many of you are going to know him, but we're going to learn about a whole new side of him tonight. Dale Martin, our Winchester Town Manager. Dale, thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for the invitation, Jay. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So Dale was happy to hear when I said I want you on the show that I told him it has nothing to do with politics. We're here to have fun. So one thing that I learned probably about a year and a half ago in my conversation with you is that you're a big gamer. But of course, when you say gamer these days, people are thinking video games.
Right.
But we like to go old school, so we're talking board games. And I see you brought some of your favorites with you tonight. And so I was hoping you could introduce us to some. Some I already know that we've been lucky enough to actually get to play with you. And we'll just have a good time tonight.
All right. Well, you're right. I have collected board games since I was a teenager many years ago. So I have about 500 board games right now in my collection, and most of them are games that people like you or most people don't know about. You know, I have a couple of the standby traditional ones: Yahtzee, Parcheesi, Monopoly. But most of my games are somewhat not mainstream, but they're a lot of fun. It's more of a challenge to find players for the games than it is the games themselves. And you and I first started talking about this when you had your Boggle party for the YMCA, and you were looking for a gift for your silent auction. And one of the games that I provided for a night of gaming was Ticket to Ride, which is, I think, the game that was used to introduce you into gaming. And most of these games are family-oriented. Several of the games that I have here in front of me are for ages 8 and up, or 10 and up, or the most complicated one I have here is for ages 12 and up. So they are youth-oriented, which helps the mind that you talked about. But there's a game for pretty much every topic that's out there. Ticket to Ride, like I said, I've played it with you and your family and had a great time with your children and your wife.
But they've gotten addicted to it.
Right, and there's a few other versions of it. There's actually somebody made a Connecticut version, but you have to print out the cards. You kind of got to print and play yourself is what they call it. But Ticket to Ride is a relatively simple card game with the board. You have to connect cities in the United States, and you get points for how long the connections are and what color the trains are.
Yeah. But I know one of the great things about it, and I think it's a similar theme through the games you collect, is that it really requires a lot of strategy and involvement. It's not just something where you're rolling dice and just following along what the game tells you. You really get to make the game what it is.
Of all the games that I have here, the 6 or so, 7 games that I have here, only one has dice. All the other ones involve cards or tiles that you lay and play tiles. And that's always surprising to people that you don't have dice in the game, because those of us, and the thing is, a lot of the games, board gaming and family gaming is really big in Europe. It's almost as big in Germany as video gaming is here in the United States. So a lot of these games are commonly referred to as Euros, for Euro games, because they don't have the dice that a lot of American games like Parcheesi or Monopoly or Yahtzee obviously have with dice.
Right.
But they do make you think. A lot of times there's a tension in the game where you have to decide, do I want to do action A or B? And what you decide has implications on what the next players decide to do.
And some long-range planning too. I really got to decide what route I'm going to take here and work towards that goal.
Yep.
And like you said, they're great for ages. And this goes back to the whole point of the show of finding ways to reconnect families. And I know it's been a huge thing for you your whole life, to the point where you run a gaming convention. Tell me a little bit about that, how that even got started.
This is a bunch of buddies and I back in Michigan. We started, usually it's a weekend in February. We rent a ballroom at a hotel, and we invite our friends and families to come and join us for a whole weekend of gaming. We start Thursday night, and we'll play games for 16, 18, 20 hours a day,
Wow.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We charge like $40 for a family of 4 to come in and play games for the whole weekend. And we generally get about 100 to 120 people. And it's been fun because I think next February will be our 9th year doing it. So it's been fun watching some of the kids that play the 8-year-olds that started as 8-year-olds. They're now 17 or in their mid-teens, and they're not the easy pushover opponents that they were back when they were 7.
Nice. And now that's translated a little locally. There's a weekly club that you participate with.
Right. I've got a small group of guys. We get together once a week and play games, usually Friday nights that we kind of move around to people's homes. But there's a few more formal game clubs scattered around Connecticut. The biggest challenge, though, is actually finding the games, because unfortunately, I've yet to find a store in Connecticut that really carries these games. So unfortunately, you either need to go to New York City or to Boston, or you need to order them online. But I prefer to, even though you pay a little bit more, I prefer to buy them in a store and support the local businesses.
Sure, absolutely. And so does it become like a challenge with your game group to who can bring the newest, most creative game to the group, and something that someone else hasn't seen yet?
There's some of that newness to it all, but a lot of times there's so many games out there, and we all have relatively extensive collections that you want to. It takes a while, and as you've played Ticket to Ride, Jay, it takes a while to learn the game, understand the strategies, and develop. Learn the intricacies of the game.
Absolutely.
So it's good to play some of the ones that you have older. I've got games, again, that go back actually into the 1960s that were made back then, but there's still some classic games, and then there's some new ones that you buy and they flop. But each one of these games probably runs about $40. Mm-hmm. So even if it's a bad game, if you try it once, it's no different in price than the cost of a movie or a dinner. And if you do enjoy it, then every time you play it,
it's a great investment.
The cost goes down. But yeah, there's games, and I know, like you said, you got your family addicted to Ticket to Ride, so I'm sure you've played that a few dozen times at least.
And we've spread it through the neighborhood. Other people have caught on and bought their own copies.
Well, Ticket to Ride was there's a German prize, a German game award that they give for Game of the Year, and Ticket to Ride actually was the first American design game to win Game of the Year, and it was back in 2004. So it was a huge win. It's what they call a great gateway game to introduce people to the revised or the renaissance of board games that are out there instead of some of the more complicated ones.
Sure. Excellent. So let's look at a few more of the ones we've got here. Now, one more that I recognized that you were able to introduce us to was Bang.
Bang is it's a cute little card game. It's gunfights in the Old West. People take on a secret role of either the sheriff or the outlaws or a deputy. And you know as well as I do that the game can be over in as little as 10 minutes. And you don't know who's the good guys and who the bad guys are. But it's a quick little game. Again, this one is for ages 8 and up. But it's a good game. One of my kids' favorites. We usually break this one out all the time as well. So.
Yeah, we enjoy that. Although we have a harder time getting a group together for that one. That one hasn't caught my wife's interest yet. So me and the 2 kids were like, all right, we need a 4th.
Right, yeah, Bang is one of those games. Most of these games are probably 4-player. They top out a Ticket to Ride, as you know, can go with 5. Bang is one of those games that you really need to get the 5 or the 6 players together, but you can probably play 4 or 5 games of this in a night, and it's a lot of fun. It's a hilarious game to play.
And that has the feature that a lot of games have, where it's expandable. You're playing it for a while and you want to make it a little more interesting. You get another set of cards that adds a whole bunch more features to the game, so it never gets old. Right,
they're called expansions, and they'll add you actually have characters in this game, and they added more characters and some other features, some other cards to spice up the game. And you can play with them or without them. That's your choice. But most games will have some sort of expansion nowadays.
Yep.
This one here, just to touch on, this is called Pacific Typhoon. This just demonstrates that there are some games that are historically based. That you play with cards. It's kind of a trick-taking game where you refight some of the battles of the World War II in the Pacific. You can play either as the American side, the Allied side, or the Japanese side. But again, this is one of those games that really shines with 5 or 6 players. But it plays in about an hour and a half. Most of these games are about an hour and a half or 2 hours. Once you become familiar with the game, sometimes they take a little bit longer. So if you're going to play with younger kids, as you know, you got to have some patience with teaching them the game.
Right. And you can even integrate, like my 5, 6-year-old daughter, while she can't really play the game, she gets involved as like the banker, giving when you take the ride, you pick a couple cards, say two red cards, she'll give you the 2 red cards.
Right.
So there's always ways to involve the whole family.
Yeah. So I have a lot of historical-based games. This is just one that we like to play a lot once we get 5 or 6
Take you back to
guys
your
together.
military days.
Oh yes, yep. Not that far back. Then if I don't get enough pleasure of trying to help out the town of Winstead, this game here is Suburbia. It's a city planning game. You get to build buildings and factories and stuff. And you try to build a really good city and try and earn points, increase your reputation, increase the income of the town.
It's a nice analog version of SimCity and all that stuff that's out there.
Right. People would call it SimCity. But again, this is a relatively simple game to play. It's for ages 8 and up. It plays with anywhere from 1. You can actually play it solo. You can try and compete against yourself. But otherwise, it's a 4-player game. Again, plays relatively quickly and is a lot of fun. All of them are fun.
Have you ever gotten some good ideas out of here that we could actually apply in town?
Yeah, picking the game up and starting over again sometimes. You wish you could do that.
Just shake it up.
Exactly. Then if running a city, there is no specific correlation between running a city and running a circus, but just to demonstrate that some of these games, there's a game for everything, and this one you actually get to run your own circus. You have to recruit the performers and pay them for their performances, and your circus travels around the cities of old Europe with Vienna and London and Madrid, and you have to have a performance and recruit the fire eaters and the lion tamers and things like that. But again, it's a different theme. This is one that's called the worker placement game, where you actually you have 3 workers and you have to decide what you want your worker to do that time on your turn, and the selections are somewhat limited. So I may want to do this action, but you've already taken the action for that turn, so that forces me to alter my plan. So you get into some of that planning that you
So is it like
about.
competing circuses?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Your circus scores so many prestige points each time, and if my circus has more prestige points than yours, then I'd be the winning player. But you have 3 performances where you get to recruit your performers for. So
excellent.
Relatively new game, a lot of fun as well. And then there are also some games which are called cooperative games, and Pandemic is a cooperative game where you're actually playing against the game system itself. So I'm not competing against you. We're both on the same side. And Pandemic is a game of epidemics. And if you think of the movie Outbreak or Contagion, there are cubes that represent different diseases, and our job is to try and squash those diseases before they spread to too much of the globe. There are other games like that involve Knights of the Round Table. You each take on a role of a knight.